20 000 personnes dans le monde meurent du cancer chaque jour. Cela se traduit par environ 8 millions de victimes par an, dont 500 000 Américains, plus de 100 000 Italiens et près de 160 000 Français. Au début du siècle dernier, le cancer frappait une personne sur 20. Dans les années 40, ce pourcentage s'élevait à une personne sur 16. Dans les années 70, à une personne sur 10. Aujourd'hui, une personne sur 3 est destinée à tomber malade du cancer au cours de sa vie. Plus d'1 million d'Américains apprennent qu'ils sont atteints du cancer chaque année. En Italie, le même sort touche environ 250 000 personnes et en France, près de 400 000. Toutes ces personnes entrent du jour au lendemain dans un tunnel sombre qui changera radicalement leur vie pour de nombreuses années. Face à une série apparemment infinie d'examens médicaux, contrôles, second avis, prescriptions, médicaments, nouveaux tests, opérations chirurgicales, thérapies de soutien et examens de contrôle, elle se retrouve complètement à la merci de la maladie. À l'intérieur de ce tunnel, chaque patient alimente un immense dispositif de santé qui fait travailler des centaines de milliers de personnes, générant des millions et des millions de dollars de chiffre d'affaires pour les industries médicales, hospitalières et pharmaceutiques. Des laboratoires de recherche aux écoles de médecine, des cliniques de prévention à la vente de médicaments à l'échelle mondiale, le système de santé autour du cancer est aujourd'hui si vaste et si coûteux qu'il a au moins autant besoin de ses patients pour survivre que les patients ont besoin de lui.
Cancer is a big business, one of the biggest businesses. The typical cancer patient spends at least $50,000 to treat his or her disease. With 1 million new American cancer patients every year, that translates to $50 billion annually spent on cancer treatment in the United States.
Pourtant, pour l'oncologie moderne, le cancer demeure toujours un mystère. Alors que ceux qui, il y a 100 ans, n'étaient que de vulgaires tacos de bois tout juste capables de s'élever à quelques mètres au-dessus du sol, sont aujourd'hui devenus des jets ultra sophistiqués, capables d'atteindre des altitudes stratosphériques à 3 fois la vitesse du son. Ce qui, il y a 100 ans, n'était que le grésillement d'un télégraphe rudimentaire connecté à l'aide de fils de cuivre, est aujourd'hui devenu un réseau mondial de communication par fibre optique, grâce auquel des millions de personnes s'échangent simultanément des informations dans tous les sens. Ce qui, il y a 100 ans, était une planète encore assez méconnue, est aujourd'hui illuminée jour et nuit et a été explorée d'un bout à l'autre, à tel point qu'il est possible d'en visiter le moindre recoin, confortablement assis dans son canapé. La seule chose restée inchangée au cours de ce siècle est l'apparente incapacité de la science médicale à comprendre et à vaincre une maladie telle que le cancer. Pourquoi ? La théorie officielle soutient que le cancer est un problème de type génétique dont l'origine se trouve au cœur de la cellule humaine.
Cancer is a group of over 100 diseases characterized by abnormal, uncontrolled cell growth.
Cancer is a sometimes fatal disease caused by the abnormal growth and division of cells. While normal cells have well-defined walls and nuclei, the uncontrolled growth in cancer cells causes the creation of abnormal, unstructured masses of tissue, known as neoplasms or tumors.
Most cancer-related deaths are due to metastasis, malignant cells that penetrate into the circulatory system and establish colonies in other parts of the body.
How and where the migrating cells stop is different for different cancer types. Once the tumor cells are no longer moving, they can begin the process of forming a new tumor by leaving the blood vessel and beginning to reproduce in the new location. If the new environment is suitable, the newly arrived cell will begin to grow and a new tumor will develop.
Cette théorie officielle, aussi appelée théorie moléculaire, est sensiblement la même qui fut développée il y a plus de 50 ans.
Cancer begins as a departure from normal cell growth that is harmful and unceasing. If the abnormal cells grow slowly in a limited area, they are called benign tumors. If the cells are spread to other parts of the body, they constitute a malignant tumor, one that is cancerous. Cells of malignant growths break off and travel through the bloodstream to other parts of the body. There, they may start new cancerous growths.
Au cours des 50 dernières années, la recherche sur la cause du cancer à l'intérieur de la cellule humaine a été poussée au-delà des limites de l'imagination. Actuellement, les laboratoires les plus avancés travaillent directement sur la cartographie du génome humain, dans le but d'identifier les gènes spécifiques qui seraient responsables, selon certains scientifiques, des différents types de cancers. Ceci ouvre la porte à un scénario de rêve pour les industries pharmaceutiques. Un monde dans lequel on pourrait offrir à chaque patient atteint du cancer un traitement personnalisé, spécialement conçu pour lui. 1 million de nouveaux malades chaque année, 1 million de nouveaux traitements à mettre au point pour chacun d'entre eux.
What we want to do is we want to match the disease with the cure or palliative treatment, whatever it is, by using the genomic tools. And that's really what the whole cancer world is now going to be about for a very long time.
Les nouveaux traitements contre le cancer sont de plus en plus liés aux gènes de l'individu et à ceux du tissu cancéreux. Le résultat est une thérapie personnalisée qui vous va comme un gant.
The question of whether we're going to break the cure barrier is not a question about if, it's a question about when.
Depuis lors, toutefois, personne n'a jamais réussi à démontrer la validité de l'hypothèse officielle, ni à prouver que l'origine du cancer soit réellement de nature génétique.
Major advances are being made in the detection, prevention, and treatment of cancer. But the mechanisms that trigger malignant cell growth are still not completely understood.
Parallèlement, la situation statistique semble avoir encore empiré.
Cancer is still the leading cause of death for people under the age of 85. In the United States, 1 in every 4 people die from cancer.
En dépit des résultats décourageants, l'oncologie officielle continue d'imposer aux patients les 3 seules thérapies jamais autorisées depuis un siècle. Chirurgie, chimiothérapie et radiothérapie. 2 de ces traitements sont à leur tour cancérigènes.
Surgery is the oldest technique and the most successful of the 3. But surgery is useful only when the cancer is localized, a minority of cases. Patients also fear radiation's dangerous side effects. One of these is that radiation can actually cause cancer. The use of radiation remains controversial even in medical circles.
As much as we could work with her, say on a math problem, she was not comprehending it.
It would take a long time to get a worksheet done.
Parts of Elizabeth's brain weren't there anymore because of the radiation, that it had killed that part of the brain. So the part of the brain that was responsible for memory was gone.
Chemotherapy is designed to kill cancer cells throughout the body. It is highly toxic, however, and it also kills healthy cells. Today, chemotherapy is often given in combination with surgery and radiation.
Your typical chemotherapy agent will certainly cause tiredness. There is a risk of sickness, but there are very good anti-sickness drugs these days that can control that. Chemotherapy frequently causes taste change. It can cause a sore mouth. The first side effect that many people ask about, however, is hair loss.
En réalité, beaucoup de médicaments chimiothérapiques sont clairement cancérigènes. La toxicité des médicaments anticancéreux est telle que tous ceux qui les manipulent doivent suivre des règles de sécurité extrêmement sévères qui comprennent la destruction complète et l'incinération à plus de 1000 degrés de tous les matériaux qui ont été en contact avec ces médicaments. Même après être passés à l'incinérateur, certains médicaments anticancéreux conservent parfois encore une certaine dose de toxicité.
But there is something new about chemotherapy that's been emerging of late.
Many women who undergo chemotherapy for breast cancer describe unsettling changes to their memory and concentration. Researchers at the University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center say this phenomenon is very real.
Women have complained of cognitive changes that have occurred during the time that they've been treated for breast cancer for a long time now. And the term chemobrain has been coined, and this is used to describe loss of concentration, difficulty remembering things, having difficulty thinking clearly, and not being able to function effectively in normal activities that the person was able to do perfectly well before they had treatment.
Simple little things. I'd have to wait to think of something, and it would be frustrating.
X is red, C is green.
Researchers say the chemotherapy creates memory problems that can last for years.
Mais les enfants sont aussi de plus en plus nombreux à commencer à montrer les effets des agents cancérigènes de la chimiothérapie.
My homework, like, let's say, like math homework, when it's real noisy, I can't focus. And it just makes me feel like my mind's being erased.
Mais y a-t-il des avantages à la chimiothérapie?
John Cairns of Harvard University published a study in Scientific American. He found that chemotherapy drugs benefit at most 5%, 1 out of 20 of the cancer patients they're given to.
If conventional therapy has such limited results, why isn't the medical profession willing to investigate alternative approaches?
La réponse à cette question se trouve peut-être dans certains événements historiques qui ont eu lieu il y a quasiment un siècle, quand la médecine officielle a finalement réussi à prendre le dessus sur ceux que l'on appelait les médecins empiriques, qui soignaient les patients grâce à des herbes et à des remèdes naturels.
In the 1800s, society sanctioned both approaches to healing. Patients had a choice of using either doctors, called allopaths, or natural healers, called empirics or homeopaths. The two groups waged a bitter philosophical debate. The allopathic doctors called their approach heroic medicine. They believed the physician must aggressively drive disease from the body. They based their practice on what they considered scientific theory. The allopaths used three main techniques. They bled the body to drain out the bad humors. They gave huge doses of toxic minerals like mercury and lead to displace the original disease. They also used surgery, but it was a brutal procedure before anesthesia and infection control. Few patients were willing to have surgery. Most patients feared allopathic methods altogether. Satirists of the day remarked that with allopathic treatment, the patient died of the cure. Competing with the doctors were the empiric healers. Contrary to the doctors, they believed in stimulating the body's own defenses to heal itself. Instead of poisonous minerals, they used vegetable products and non-toxic substances in small quantities. They especially favored herbs learned from Native American and old European traditions. The empirics said they based their remedies not on theory, but on observation and experience. Satirists of the day added that with empiric treatment, the patient died of the disease, not the cure. And the balance of medical power remained equal until the turn of the century. Then, new medical treatments emerged that were potentially very profitable. The AMA joined with strong financial forces to transform medicine into an industry. The fortunes of Carnegie, Morgan, and Rockefeller financed surgery, radiation, and synthetic drugs. They were to become the economic foundations of the new medical economy.
The takeover of the medical industry was accomplished by the takeover of the medical schools. Well, the people that we're talking about, Rockefeller and Carnegie in particular, came to the picture and said, we will put up money. They offered tremendous amounts of money to the schools that would agree to cooperate with them. The donors said to the schools, we're giving you all this money. Now, would it be too much to ask if we could put some of our people on your board of directors to see that our money is being spent wisely? Well, when somebody's offering a starving school, a struggling school, a couple of $1 million, and all they ask in return is that some very well-known and prestigious individuals be added to your board of directors, the answer in many cases is yes, we'd be honored to have these people on our board of directors. Almost overnight, all of the major universities, which we now consider to be major universities in the field of medicine, received large grants from these sources and also accepted 1, 2, or 3 of these people that I mentioned on their board of directors, and the schools literally were taken over by the financial interests that put up the money. Now, what happened as a result of that is that the schools did receive an infusion of money. They were able to build new buildings. They were able to add expensive equipment to their laboratories. They were able to hire top-notch teachers. They were able to upgrade the level of medical education in America by 100-fold. But at the same time as doing that, they skewed the whole thing in the direction of pharmaceutical drugs. That was the efficiency in philanthropy. The doctors from that point forward in history would be taught pharmaceutical drugs. Those schools that did not accept those terms did not receive the money, and they generally fell by the wayside, and today you probably have never heard of them. All of the great teaching institutions in America were captured by the pharmaceutical interests in this fashion, and it's amazing how little money it really took to do it.
Surgery became viable with anesthesia and infection control, and doctors advocated expensive, radical operations. These in turn produced the need for a large, lucrative hospital system. Radium fever swept medicine. The price of radium rose 1,000% almost overnight. Another costly technological industry entered the hospital system. A drug industry grew out of the booming patent medicine business. The doctors changed educational standards and licensing regulations to exclude the empirics. Soon, only AMA-approved doctors could legally practice medicine. In a brief 20 years, the AMA came to dominate medical practice. Organized Medicine launched a media campaign to associate the empirics with quacks. The code word for competition was quackery.
So now the average doctor goes through school, he gets a great education, he has to be really smart to get through it, he learns all about drugs, he doesn't know too much about basic nutrition. I found that the average wife of these physicians knows more about nutrition than he does, but they sure know their drugs. And if you go to your typical doctor today, I don't care what it is, chances are you're going to walk out of there with a prescription. Why? Because that's what he has been trained to do.
The companies that make up the pharmaceutical industry are among the largest corporations in the world. Together, these businesses have come to be known as Bigpharma. In 2004, their combined global sales were over $500 billion, with Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson leading the pack. In the U.S., the core of Bigpharma's immense profits is from sales of prescription medication. And since these drugs can only be prescribed by medical professionals, most of the industry's promotional and marketing activities are directed at doctors, pharmacists, and other healthcare providers.
This starts out at the first day of medical school, and in many medical schools, even the incoming students that are 2 years away from seeing a patient will start to get gifts from the pharmaceutical industry. And as these students get farther along in their medical education, the interactions and the gifts escalate to free lunches, to dinners.
Champagne, brunches, happy hours, New York jet tickets. No matter where you spend the money, you make money. And my boss always told me, don't worry about it. There'll always be more funding. Spend what you can. In fact, if I give you $100,000 to spend, Gene, I want you to spend $200,000.
In addition to providing gifts and trips, perhaps the most potent weapon in the drug rep's arsenal is free drug samples. In 2004, the industry gave away the retail equivalent of almost $16 billion worth of drugs, and these products are the chief enabler of the marketing machine.
And what it is a way of getting both patients and physicians hooked on their product.
In any town USA, you walk into a physician's office and you walk into a room that's usually a 10 by 10 room full of hundreds of thousands of dollars of samples. They're all the most expensive branded drugs. These are drugs that cost upwards of $100 to $300 a month, and the office is full of them.
Ce sont justement maintenant les anticancéreux qui figurent parmi les médicaments les plus coûteux. Une boîte de 30 comprimés de erlotinib, un anticancéreux produit par Roche, coûte 3 239 €. Une boîte de Néavar, produite par Bayer, coûte 5 300 €. 30 comprimés de sunitinib, l'anticancéreux de Pfizer, coûte 8 714 €.
Physician prescribing the appropriate medication is not necessarily what the industry needs. What the industry needs, or a particular company, is the physician prescribing their medication.
Before a drug can legally be sold in this country, it has to be approved by the FDA wherever it's made. Approval depends on the company demonstrating in clinical trials that a new drug is reasonably safe and effective. But compared with what? They don't have to compare their new drugs with existing drugs to treat the same condition with the best standard treatment. In most cases, they only have to compare their new drugs with a placebo.
The FDA currently only requires, when you are seeking to have a new drug approved, that you show that that drug is better than a placebo. In other words, that the drug is better than nothing. That's really not very useful information for the doctor.
Before 1980, most clinical research was funded by the National Institutes of Health. During the 90s, most of that research got pulled out of universities and was brought to for-profit research organizations. The problem is that gave virtual complete control over the research to the drug companies. They could design the studies. They have control of data so that many of the authors of the most important articles published in our best journals aren't even allowed to see their own data. They don't get free access to their own data. And they have control over publication.
Studies are frequently either hard to find or the results are manipulated by drug companies.
I think the most shocking thing is to find that evidence is simply not available or it is distorted.
In clinical studies conducted in approximately 38,000 people,
donc, quand on entend dire à la télévision qu'une nouvelle recherche scientifique a établi un certain constat, personne n'est en mesure d'en vérifier la véracité.
When drug companies set the research agenda, do the research and design the research, have tremendous influence over the people who get to write it up, and in fact have tremendous influence over the journals that publish it, because they're very, very beholden to drug companies for their own financial well-being.
More than half of the budget of the division of the FDA that approves new drugs and oversees drug safety is funded by the drug companies. 90% of the clinical studies are funded by the drug companies. 59% of the experts who write the clinical guidelines have an active financial relationship with the drug that's being considered in the process.
Ainsi, l'industrie pharmaceutique a pris avant toute chose le contrôle du système médical universitaire. Puis elle a mis en place l'Association médicale américaine, qui est depuis lors la seule autorisée à exercer légalement. Elle s'est ensuite emparée de la totalité du processus d'expérimentation des médicaments. Après quoi, elle influence lourdement les publications académiques qui promeuvent ces médicaments, et enfin, elle contrôle l'agence fédérale qui doit garantir leur innocuité et leur non-toxicité. À l'extrême opposé se trouvent les citoyens malades, et entre les deux, les docteurs qui doivent les soigner et qui ne peuvent se baser que sur les informations générées par les industries pharmaceutiques que personne n'est en mesure de vérifier. Dans cette exaspérante recherche du monopole total de l'information, même Internet n'a pas été épargné.
There are a number of groups on the internet that look like these bona fide, disinterested patient groups that would only want the best thing that's right for them, and you come to find out that they're 100% funded by a drug company.
Mais tout ceci n'était évidemment pas encore suffisant pour l'industrie pharmaceutique.
In recent years, Big Pharma has pushed its way into the traditional doctor-patient relationship and found a new way to increase sales by targeting patients directly and independently, largely through television advertising.
Do you know about the purple pill called Nexium?
I know.
I know. Gardasil is the only cervical cancer vaccine that helps protect against 4 types of HPV.
Maintenant que la liste obligatoire des effets secondaires est plus longue que celle des vertus des médicaments, Les aspects négatifs sont clamés directement de la bouche des protagonistes dans des spots publicitaires qui les présentent du même ton joyeux que les qualités avantées.
Side effects include pain, swelling, itching and redness at the injection site, fever, nausea, dizziness, vomiting, and fainting.
Voilà qui nous perd complètement sur un aspect déjà présenté de façon ambiguë et hautement irresponsable.
Last year, between 3 and 5 billion prescriptions were written in the US alone. And for all of its many miracles and heroism, the pharmaceutical fantasy has also left disaster in its wake. The tragedies of drug side effects are being exposed daily. Prozac, Vioxx, Celebrex, Baycol, Lariam, and Zoloft, just to name a few, are deeply uncomfortable reminders that secrecy and sales have often circumvented safety.
And what I found after analyzing government databases and peer-reviewed journal articles, I found that 784,000 people are dying annually, prematurely, due to modern medicine intervention.
There's 122,000 people that die every year from known side effects to prescription medications.
The drug industry is the most successful global industry in the world. What they don't want you to do is get better, because if you get better, their market's gone.
Anything that comes from nature cannot be patented. They're not interested in that. But what they are interested in, finding something perhaps within something in nature, if they can find some subcomponent that they can extract and then make it a man-made chemical that works the same way, then they can patent that, then they're interested, but not if it comes from nature, and it doesn't make any difference whether it works. So, we translate that into the real world of FDA approval. Surely these drug companies aren't going to spend $20 million or more testing any substance from nature because it can't be patented. That, and of course the FDA says it's illegal to use unless it's been tested for efficacy and safety. Now you see the catch-22 you're in there. Nothing from nature, regardless of how effective it might be, will ever be proven safe or effective according to the FDA. It'll never be. Because nobody's going to spend the money to go through the test. So therefore, everything from nature will always be condemned by the FDA as unproven. An unproven cancer cure.
As if by design, health choices are limited, information is scarce, lives are ruined, and the truth be damned. The fear machine is well oiled by petrochemical dollars and a near worldwide monopoly in healthcare. It works overtime to prevent the truth about dietary supplements from getting out to the public. It has always been so.
In a small town in northern Ontario, the year 1922, Green Case first learnt of a cancer remedy which she termed Essiac.
À l'insu de l'histoire, cette fragile infirmière canadienne réussit à soigner héroïquement des milliers de personnes atteintes de cancer avec une simple décoction d'herbes. En soignant une ancienne patiente, Renée remarqua qu'elle avait une cicatrice sur le sein. La patiente lui expliqua qu'il s'agissait des séquelles d'un cancer dont elle avait réussi à guérir des années auparavant grâce à une décoction d'herbes que lui avait suggérée le sage de la tribu locale d'Ojibwa. Renée essaya la même recette sur sa tante, à qui l'on avait récemment diagnostiqué un cancer.
I asked Dr. R.O. Fisher, who later was Dean of the University of Toronto, if he would watch over her, if I would try some of these herbs. And he said he would, and it took quite a while, but she got better. And she lived for 21 years.
Après cette expérience positive, Renée laissa tomber l'hôpital et se mit à soigner les gens à l'aide de la décoction d'herbes qu'elle appela par la suite Essiac. Essiac, c'est son nom écrit à l'envers. La rumeur se répandit rapidement et le nombre de patients guéris du cancer commença à se multiplier.
I was diagnosed in Toronto General Hospital as having
a growth in the bowel which was inoperable. And that was in January. And my husband was told that when the snow was gone, I would probably be gone with it. So through friends, I was directed to Miss Case. And I came to her and had treatments from her for practically 3 years. And felt I was cured, and I've had no return of it since.
Dr. R.O. Bastida of Bracebridge sent me a patient, cancer of the bowel, Bert Rosen, and I cured him. So Dr. Bastida went before the town council and mayor and persuaded them to give me a building that they had taken for taxes as a clinic, that I had made a great discovery and that I should be supported in my own hometown. So they set up the clinic where I treated for 8.5 years.
En quelques mois, la clinique fut remplie de malades venus des 4 coins du Canada.
Her clinic would be full every time we were there. And there were people came in ambulances who were not able to come in for a treatment. She would have to go out and administer the medicine in the ambulance. Then as the time went on, we watched these people be able to walk in. And finally, they were driving their own car to get SCI.
I treated from 300 to 600 patients a week. And the only way they would allow me to do this was free of charge. And I had to have a doctor's diagnosis for every case I treated.
So we brought the diagnosis to Nurse Case, and I took treatment from her every week for about a year. And I have no cancer today.
Ce fut un certain docteur Leonardo de Buffalo qui, ayant compris le potentiel explosif du traitement de Renée, l'avertit de ce qu'elle allait devoir affronter.
He was a cancer surgeon, and he said, "You think you have a cure for cancer?" I said, "I'm way beyond thinking I know." Then I had 5 other doctors in examining patients, and he asked if he could go in with them and examine patients, and I told him he could. So then he told me, he said, "You have it, but the medical profession will never let you do this to us."
Peu après, un mystérieux groupe d'investisseurs se présenta à Renée, lui offrant $1 million pour connaître la recette de sa décoction. Mais elle refusa l'offre, du fait qu'il ne lui était pas garanti que le traitement serait mis gratuitement à la disposition de quiconque en aurait besoin.
Green case was called before the legislature in 1938 to determine Esiac's legal status.
I was trying to legalize my treatment, and the patients went out and got this petition signed, 55,000 names on it. And I went before the legislature and I lost out by 3 votes.
Public outcry forced the establishment of a cancer commission to investigate herbal remedies. The greatest majority of Reen's evidence was rejected.
You see, they said the doctors all made mistaken diagnosis. That's why the patients thought they were cured. I kept on my clinic as long as I could until they stopped the doctors from giving a diagnosis, and then I had to stop. And it's a sad thing when somebody comes and they have somebody that is ill with cancer and the medical profession can do nothing for them, and they beg of me to treat them. It's a very, very sad thing to turn them away. And I had a nervous breakdown over that, so I really had to stop. don't see how they can refrain from recognizing it, because if you have the proof, you have the diagnosis from the doctor, you have the pathological findings, and you find you have the living patient to show that they are still alive after the medical profession has given them up. And yet they refuse to admit that it is a cure.
Après s'être remise de cet épisode dépressif, Renée repartit de zéro, en préparant la décoction et en soignant les patients dans son propre sous-sol. Mais très rapidement, les autorités locales recommencèrent à la persécuter, la faisant arrêter plus d'une fois sous les prétextes les plus invraisemblables. Mais d'une certaine façon, la notoriété de l'Essiac avait franchi la frontière, puisqu'un jour, Renée reçut une invitation à tester sa décoction dans une clinique américaine, le centre médical Brush de Cambridge, dans le Massachusetts. Le directeur de la clinique, Charles Brush, était également le médecin et un ami personnel du président Kennedy.
Dr. McClure, an outstanding researcher, undertook to study the effects of a drug or an herb called Asiac. And we found that it was non-toxic and did have effects in help in the treatment of cancer.
À ce moment-là, le Dr Brush suggéra de soumettre l'Essiac à des tests de toxicité afin de le faire certifier par la FDA comme un traitement possible contre le cancer. Mais une fois les plantes arrivées à l'hôpital Sloan Kettering, l'un des plus importants centres américains de recherche sur le cancer, la procédure finit par se perdre sans explication et ne fut curieusement jamais terminée.
The results that I reported to Green case were studies in sarcoma 180 in the mice, in which we were looking not only for possible primary inhibition of the tumor, which did not occur, but also for regressions. And there was a very small percentage in a small group of regressions, but we never had the opportunity to confirm this and to see whether we could obtain better results.
Finalement, l'Essiac n'a jamais été approuvé par la FDA, exactement comme l'avait prévu le docteur Leonardo 30 années plus tôt. D'autres tentatives pour légaliser le traitement furent menées par plusieurs groupes de patients qui sont parvenus à dénoncer les autorités médicales pour leur avoir refusé un traitement possible contre le cancer.
Asking to be given the right to use SEX since orthodox medicine no longer has any answers for them.
You can't burn a cancer out of a body with radiation. You can't poison it out of the body without poisoning the body as well. And I feel that nature holds the answer, the only answer for cancer patients, and as such, we should have it. Our constitutional rights at the moment are being denied to us, and it shouldn't even come down to a court hearing. It should be a matter of fact that we have what we want for our body.
I have cancer from head to toe in the bone. You're going to try and tell me that if I think there's something that's going to give me a little bit of life, that I'm not going to try it?
Mais la réponse des autorités n'a jamais changé, même dans les cas où les responsables se trouvaient forcés d'inventer des arguments les plus ridicules pour ne pas avoir à reconnaître la validité de l'Essiac.
Release Laetrile and Essiac and Carbazin and so on. I can give you a very long list. You'll have a very wide choice. Then, when there is something effective, how will you know which to choose from?
Pour éviter tout malentendu, certains ont même pensé empêcher l'utilisation du traitement par les médecins qui en reconnaîtraient l'efficacité.
It's well known in the state of California. The state legislature actually made it a felony for a doctor to use any than the accepted methods of treatment for cancer, and they named them in the legislation: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and cobalt. And when doctors are hemmed in like this, and their very livelihood is threatened, they're not going to be anxious to step out of line.
Lasse de cette bataille absurde et incompréhensible à ses yeux, Renée rentra simplement chez elle et continua de soigner les patients jusqu'à sa mort, survenue en 1978. L'année précédant son décès, un important groupe d'anciens patients décida d'organiser une surprise à Renée pour la remercier de tout ce qu'elle avait fait pour eux.
Patients and supporters arrived in Bracebridge, Ontario. They came to help Reen celebrate her 90th birthday. They have experienced the benefits of ESIAC. Many of the people here feel they owe their life to Reen.
Remember she brought the two ladies up here that day in the house?
She doesn't call me.
Teresa.
I have given my life for it. I couldn't give any more than that. God's been good to let me live this long, to see it used. And used by people.
L'histoire de Harry Hoxsey est très similaire à celle de René. Cet homme d'affaires texan avait reçu de son père une recette de plantes qui allait se révéler hautement efficace contre le cancer. Au contraire de René, Hoxsey avait beaucoup d'argent, était un combattant né et n'avait peur de personne, ce qui posa les bases pour ce qui fut l'une des batailles les plus longues, âpres et palpitantes entre un citoyen américain et les institutions médicales dans l'histoire des États-Unis.
The trouble began with what seemed like good news.
And we now have in our files and our records many, many thousands of case histories and records, pathological proof, X-ray photographic studies that we do positively cure cancer, both internal and external. I give you names, times, dates, names of doctors, names of institutions.
The doctors labeled Hoxsey the worst cancer quack of the century. But Hoxsey's supporters called him an effective healer, persecuted by a medical trust.
But up to now, they have never proven that this treatment don't cure cancer.
The ex-coal miner with an 8th grade education became a legend in his own time. According to the Hoxsey legend, the remedies were discovered by his great-grandfather experimenting on a sick horse. As the story goes, John Hoxsey was a veterinarian whose prize stallion got cancer. He put it out to pasture to die. But 3 weeks later, the tumor had stabilized. He observed the horse eating unusual plants, not part of its normal diet. Within a year, the horse was well. So John Hoxsey began to experiment on animals with the herbs, and he added other popular home remedies. He claimed success and passed the formulas down through the family, who eventually used them on people. Hoxsey said his father was the first to try the medicines on people. He gave young Harry the formulas with a deathbed wish to make the treatment available to people whether or not they could pay. Prophetically, he warned the boy against the high priests of medicine who would fight him jealously. It didn't take long. Hoxsey started his first clinic in Illinois in 1924, and he immediately incurred the wrath of organized medicine. He was arrested more times than any other man in medical history. Yet by the 1950s, the Hoxsey Clinic of Dallas, Texas was the largest privately owned cancer center in the world. Hoxsey clinics reached through 17 states. Endorsing the treatment were senators, judges, and even some doctors. 2 federal courts upheld its therapeutic value. If the treatment was worthless, how did it gain so much support? To claim a cure for cancer is to invite evaluation. While the medical profession turned its back on Hoxsey, numerous individuals did make personal investigations. These experiences repeatedly turned skeptics into believers. Among them was Esquire magazine writer James Wakefield Burke, who in 1939 began covering the Hoxsey story.
My boss, Arnold Gingrich, one day said, "Why don't you go down to Texas and let's expose this fellow. He's getting too big." And the American Medical Association liked to put him out of business, and said, "You go down and get acquainted with him," and says, "We'll do a couple of pieces on him and put an end to this." So it was an assignment. I came to Texas. I expected to stay about a day, get my information, and leave. I became fascinated. I stayed for 6 weeks. Every day, Harry would pick me up, bring me to the clinic. We'd come in the morning, and he would put his arm around these old men and women, say, "Dad, them doctors been cutting you up. says, I ain't gonna let them sons of bitches kill you, you're gonna live. And he'd treat them, and I'd watch him treat them. They'd get better and begin to get well. So I wrote an outline for a piece which I called The Quack Who Cured Cancer. And I sent it back to the editors, but it never came out.
Assistant District Attorney Al Templeton was more than a skeptic. He arrested Hoxsey more than 100 times in 2 years. Then his own brother, Mike, got terminal cancer and secretly went to Hoxsey. When Mike Templeton got well, Al Templeton gave Hoxsey the credit. Hoxsey's prosecutor became his lawyer. More and more people kept supporting Hoxsey's claims of a cure. His boldest promoter was Christian evangelist Gerald Winrod. His radio broadcast reached millions of listeners with sensational reports of Hoxsey's mounting successes.
I wish to begin this broadcast by reading for you what I regard as a very important statement, and I quote, Judge W.L. Thornton, this is the second jury of 12 men that has found in my court that the Hoxsey treatment cures cancer. 10 doctors found that the number of cures reaches into the thousands.
Former United States Senator Thomas studied a large number of cures. I had made my own investigation, had satisfied myself that cancer was really being cured by the Hoxsey method.
This humble reporter can only say, God bless these quacks, the only quacks who are curing cancer today.
But a new cancer treatment needs more than personal investigations to gain acceptance. It needs a formal scientific review.
And when I say to you, all I want is to have them come here. The American Medical Association, the Pure Food and Drug, the federal government, anybody, come here and make an investigation. And if I don't prove to them beyond any question of a doubt that our treatment is superior to radium X-ray and surgery, then I will lock the doors of this institution forever.
Mais la profession médicale ne répondit pas à son appel.
The doctors claim that they already knew from their medical education that his remedies had no efficaciousness at all, was no cure. They were just set in their ways and adamant in their beliefs.
According to Hoxsey, there was a more sinister reason the medical profession wouldn't investigate. Hoxsey said the AMA doctors invited him to demonstrate the treatment. Among them was Dr. Morris Fishbein, editor of the influential AMA journal. According to Hoxsey, the day after his successful demonstration, a high AMA official asked to buy the rights to the formulas. The alleged offer would have given all rights to a group of doctors, including Dr. Fishbein.
Exactement comme René Kess, Hoxsey refusa l'offre du fait qu'il n'avait aucune garantie quant à la mise à disposition gratuite du traitement pour ceux qui en auraient besoin.
But one thing was certain. Hoxsey had made a very powerful enemy. By crossing swords with Dr. Fishbein, he alienated the most influential figure in medicine. Dr. Fishbein held a unique position. As journal editor, he controlled the main income-producing organ of the AMA and thus the organization. He also published the accepted standards of medical practice. After the Chicago incident, Dr. Fishbein blackballed Hoxsey by branding him a quack in the journal. It commented that Hoxsey's most enthusiastic supporter was the local undertaker. The AMA attack was relentless. Dr. Fishbein and Hoxsey would battle each other for 25 years to come in a drama of national dimensions. But rather than settling the dispute through scientific means, they played it out in the media.
At the association's headquarters in Chicago, vigilant against quackery is Dr. Morris Fishbein.
There is no serum, drug, or combination of drugs that we know that will definitely cure cancer.
When Hoxsey approached the National Cancer Institute for an investigation, the agency refused. The NCI said his medical records were incomplete. Hoxsey said doctors refused to supply necessary records because of Dr. Fishbein's influence. The government concluded it would be a waste of public funds to investigate. Having struck oil in Texas, Hoxsey offered to pay for a test himself. His challenges were putting Dr. Fishbein under public pressure, and the doctor fought back hard in the public arena. But when he wrote blood money for the Hearst Sunday papers, he went too far. Hoxie sued Dr. Fishbein and the Hearst newspaper empire for libel and slander. He didn't seem to stand a chance. The nation's most notorious quack faced a who's who of American medicine. Surprisingly, Harry Hoxie became the first man ever to win a judgment against Dr. Fishbein and the AMA. Dr. Fishbein had to resign from his post at the AMA. But the Hoxie-Fishbein trials held an even more shocking revelation. Dr. Fishbein admitted in court that Hoxie's supposedly brutal pastes actually did cure external cancers. The most dangerous external cancer is melanoma. It can spread rapidly through the body. Doctors advise extremely radical surgery. Even so, melanoma is often fatal.
We have more positive proven cases of melanoma in our records and our files and the patients to talk to that have been cured in this institution than any institution in the world, and that's a broad statement, but we have the facts to back it up.
Hoxie parvint à produire un film pour faire entendre sa voix à l'Association des médecins.
It would be an innovation to men of the medical profession if, instead of devoting so much time and money to court trials, sniping tactics, and smear campaigns, they would come to the clinic, do some investigating, check into our methods, speak to some of our patients. Then they would understand why our treatment has been as effective and, in most cases, far more successful than anything they've had to offer as a solution to the cancer problems.
Mais au lieu de répondre à l'appel, l'institution médicale intensifia la bataille. Mildred Nelson avait dirigé les cliniques de Hoxie depuis le début de sa carrière.
But he was never investigated except in a criminal type of a way to see what he might be doing wrong. The Food and Drug have always been famous for harassing the Hoxie patients. Go to people's houses, take their medicine when it was delivered to them, talk to them, tell them they were doing wrong.
But when the government couldn't stop Hoxie in court, the FDA decided to take unprecedented action.
Sufferers from cancer, their families, physicians, and all concerned with the care of cancer patients are hereby advised and warned that the so-called Hoxie treatment for internal cancer has been found on the basis of evidence presented by the FDA to be a worthless treatment. And it was so successful that the FDA then went ahead and issued it in a poster form, which was put up in post offices around the country.
I'm swimming in blood now. They've done everything they possibly can to try to humiliate me. They've had me in court many, many times. But do I care about that? I'm not thinking about what they're doing to me. I'm thinking about the 12,000 patients who's under treatment observation here at this clinic. I'm only thinking of one thing: suffering humanity.
But the government did more than just warn the public. Although federal prosecutors couldn't prove the treatment was worthless, they did outlaw it on technicalities like false labeling in interstate commerce.
At one time, we had 17 clinics open across the country. Food and Drug walked in the same day to every one of them and padlocked them. And no way did Harry have the money to fight that in court, state by state.
Après avoir perdu toutes ses cliniques, Harry Hoxie finit par jeter l'éponge après 25 ans de guerre contre l'institution médicale. Il construisit une clinique au Mexique, plaça Mildred Nelson à sa tête avant de se retirer au Texas jusqu'à sa mort en 1974. Pendant des années, la clinique soigna des milliers de patients et continue encore avec de nouveaux médecins depuis la mort de Mildred Nelson. Mais le traitement de Hoxie reste interdit en Amérique et sa mixture de plantes ne peut même pas être expédiée légalement dans ce pays. Ceux qui souhaitent l'utiliser doivent systématiquement se rendre au Mexique et ne rapporter que la quantité nécessaire à leur usage personnel. Je vois dans Gerson l'un des génies les plus éminents de l'histoire de la médecine, Albert Schweitzer. Les 1000 théories sur la nutrition et les 1000 régimes pour une alimentation saine que nous connaissons aujourd'hui ont tous un seul père, Maximilian Gerson. Il fut le premier à proposer, au début du siècle dernier, l'idée que la santé dépend avant tout d'une alimentation saine. Né en Allemagne en 1881, il fut inspiré dès son plus jeune âge par la figure d'Ignaz Semmelweis, le docteur hongrois qui avait découvert que pour éviter les fièvres puerpérales dues à des infections, il suffisait que les docteurs se lavent les mains avec une solution chlorée.
Prior to receiving his doctorate as a medical student, Max Gerson suffered from severe and repeated migraine headaches, leaving him essentially unable to function for days. After 2 years of experimenting, Dr. Gerson was able to eliminate his migraines completely by eating only certain raw fruits and vegetables. By 1918, word was spreading about the Gerson migraine diet. But on one occasion, a patient returned with an observation. Not only had the migraine been relieved, but his skin tuberculosis also disappeared. The astounding news spread like wildfire. In April 1924, famous lung specialist Dr. Ferdinand Sauerbruch offered to do a clinical trial with 450 incurable skin tuberculosis patients. At the commencement of the study, Sauerbruch said to Gerson privately that if even one patient showed improvement, he would believe every word of Gerson's treatment. 446 out of 450 patients recovered, over 99%. Dr. Gerson and his wife Gretchen had 3 daughters, Joanna, Gertrude, and the youngest, Charlotte. Of all the children, Charlotte took a special interest in her father's work. By the late 1920s, Dr. Gerson's fame had spread throughout Europe, especially after he cured Dr. Albert Schweitzer's wife, Helena, of pulmonary tuberculosis and Schweitzer's daughter's skin disease. When Dr. Schweitzer was 75 years old, he came to Dr. Gerson with diabetes and was also cured.
La thérapie de Gerson a pour but la désintoxication complète du corps, obtenue à travers une série de lavages d'estomac à base de café et d'un régime de fruits et légumes crus, cultivés dans des conditions optimales. La viande est absolument à proscrire, comme l'explique Charlotte, la fille du docteur Gerson, âgée aujourd'hui de 82 ans.
Meat in the body, in the digestive process, causes acidity, phosphoric acid. And in this kind of acidity, the body isn't able to function. The body has to maintain homeostasis. It has to maintain a very exact level of alkalinity versus acid.
Une fois nettoyé de toutes les toxines, le corps humain confirme régulièrement être une merveilleuse machine, capable de guérir seule de presque n'importe quelle maladie.
In 1933 and World War II, Gerson and his family fled Nazi persecution, eventually settling in New York. Dr. Gerson's 7 siblings died in the Holocaust. Throughout the 40s, Dr. Gerson's success at his New York clinic stunned the medical community, but also evoked the dark forces within it. Dr. Gerson was curing patients with cancer.
Les succès de Gerson parvinrent aux oreilles du sénateur Claude Pepper, qui en 1946 l'appela à témoigner devant une commission gouvernementale dans le cadre de la préparation d'une importante loi. Pepper comptait mobiliser et rassembler aux États-Unis, dans un lieu adapté, un nombre conséquent d'experts de niveau mondial pour coordonner leurs travaux et bénéficier de leurs services dans le but suprême de trouver des moyens de prévenir et de traiter le cancer. Gerson présenta à la commission les dossiers complets des 10 cas de patients en phase terminale qu'il avait complètement guéris, dont 5 étaient venus témoigner en personne. Les témoignages furent si convaincants que le célèbre journaliste Raymond Swing, qui avait assisté aux dépositions, se rua sur les microphones de la radio ABC pour annoncer à la nation qu'on avait trouvé le traitement contre le cancer. La réaction du public fut fulgurante. C'était la folie aux standards de ABC qui restèrent saturés pendant des jours entiers. Mais ce qui arriva ensuite fut encore plus stupéfiant. 2 semaines après son annonce à la radio et après 30 ans de carrière, Raymond Swing fut licencié sans préavis et ne put jamais retrouver du travail dans le secteur du journalisme américain. Sa tête avait été demandée par l'Association des médecins américains de Maurice Fishbane. Fishbein était depuis longtemps en lutte contre Gerson, lorsque le docteur allemand premier au monde avait dénoncé les dangers du tabac à une époque où l'annonceur publicitaire principal de l'Association des médecins américains était justement l'entreprise Philip Morris.
Repeated national survey, doctors in all branches of medicine, doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel. Yes, according to this repeated nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette.
Entre-temps, le projet de loi du sénateur Pepper disparut dans le néant et ne fut jamais discuté au Parlement. Depuis, Max Gerson fut ostracisé de la communauté médicale tout entière, qui lui apposa l'étiquette de charlatan et l'abandonna à son sort.
I was investigated 5 times. What do you mean by being investigated, sir? From the EME. They investigated you? Yes, 5 times. Every time they come, I show them, here's a patient you sent home to die, cured. Other patient, you sent home to die, cured. Next patient, you sent home to die, cured. What are you going to do? You don't look like the type of man that's going to give up at this point. No. How could I give up this when I see these wonderful results? That's impossible. First, I write the cancer book. And in that cancer book, I will bring in as many cases as possible sent home to die. So that every physician here in the country can read it. And I will have it translated in many languages.
Gerson mit 10 ans à écrire son livre, dans lequel il présenta 50 cas de guérison de patients en phase terminale, documentés de A à Z. Mais il ne trouva aucun grand éditeur américain disposé à le publier.
At that point, he was totally and forever banned from publication in the United States.
Why was the American Medical Association so opposed to the Gerson therapy? I think all the medical associations were opposed to the Gerson therapy. Here comes a new approach, a nutritional approach, an effective approach. The medical pharmaceutical industry, if it even wants a cure for cancer, since there's so much profit in this disease, certainly does not want the cure to be a nutritional one.
Gerson passa le reste de sa vie enfermé dans son appartement de New York. Il rendait visite aux patients, auxquels il prescrivait le traitement qui, entre-temps, fut interdit aux États-Unis.
This is where Dr. Gerson was up until the day of his death, where he had a clinic, where he saw patients, where patients recovered from cancer, where he documented so many recoveries, yet those recoveries are not available to the public. Those published articles have been published in Europe, but have not been allowed to be published in American journals.
Why?
The reason for that is the fact that it's not a patented medicine, and it's not an expensive medicine. I mean, this is the crux of the matter. This is a natural therapy that allows people to take control of their own health and not require drug interventions, and therefore it doesn't fit into the medical scientific model of American medicine.
If the Gerson therapy were permitted inside the United States, and I believe that it should be, we would see a dramatic decrease in deaths from cancer. I would estimate the fatality rate would go down by at least 50%, very possibly more so.
Exactement comme dut le faire Mildred Nelson, la directrice des cliniques de Hoxsey, la fille de Gerson fut également obligée de se rendre au Mexique pour ouvrir une clinique afin de continuer à soigner ses patients. Depuis lors, la clinique enregistre un flux ininterrompu de personnes venues des 4 coins du monde et les dossiers médicaux relatifs aux guérisons de plus de 1500 patients sont à la disposition de quiconque souhaite les consulter.
Further, any physician is heartily invited to come to the Mexican hospital and visit and see a patient there or visit with the patients, and with their permission, then they would have access to their medical records.
Mais la communauté médicale refusa catégoriquement l'invitation, tout en continuant à nier officiellement la validité de la thérapie Gerson. Le docteur Edel figure depuis de nombreuses années parmi les médecins les plus populaires en Amérique pour avoir longtemps présenté à la télévision les positions de la médecine officielle.
I don't think the Gerson's therapy has ever cured a terminally ill patient. People get very confused by this. If you think of basically what's in Gerson therapy, you really wouldn't expect it to cure cancer. But sometimes cancer cures itself. There is a rate of cancer that goes away by itself. Some people didn't really have cancer. It was a misdiagnosis.
In 1986, I was diagnosed with pancreas cancer, which had spread to my liver, gallbladder, and spleen. The doctors told me I had 3 months to live, to go home, get my finances in order, and prepare to die. My husband just wouldn't accept it. I was only 46 at the time, far too young, so we came home, did therapy for 2 years. After 3 months, my doctors here wondered why I was still living. They asked me if I would have a CAT scan, which I did. The masses of cancer had gone. They said, I don't know what you're doing. We don't want to know what you're doing. Just keep doing it. The doctors at that time had said I would never live to see my second grandchild, which he is now 19 years old. So we proved them wrong.
After the therapy, we went back to Utah to a specialist on blood, and she said my blood was so clean and clear that she couldn't tell I'd ever had cancer, and she said I was the first patient that ever happened to.
Yes, and after I had gone back to the oncologist after I had done the Gerson therapy for a couple months, at that time when they had found that I was cured of cancer from the CT scan that they had done on my abdomen, he couldn't believe it. He thought it was a miracle.
For the 10 years following being on the Gerson therapy, which took a year and a half, I started going back to the Mayo Clinic and seeing Dr. Scott, who was an oncologist there, just for checkups to be sure I was clear. And he said everything was like an 18-year-old again. My blood profile was perfect, and he couldn't believe how I looked and how much energy I had, and he asked me what I'd done, and I went over the Gerson therapy with him. Dr. Scott said, that's great, but he said that we can't sell that.
Le Dr Wallace Simpson dirige la Scientific Review of Alternative Medicine, la revue scientifique officielle sur les traitements alternatifs et sur les pratiques médicales aberrantes qui entend faire des analyses scientifiques et objectives.
Gerson therapy ever cured a cancer patient?
Oh, of course not. They won't even release their records. So,
what would it take for you to be convinced that this therapy has credibility?
Well, first of all, they have to show some reason why it should work. We know how cancers behave, and we know the kinds of things that cause cancer. So they have to come up with some kind of a believable theory of why their diet should work. But second of all, they'd have to convince us that everything we know about it in the past 50 years is wrong, and they're right. Now, how are they going to come up with material like that? That's impossible. They don't have it.
Dr. Gerson documented so many recoveries, yet those recoveries are not available to the public. Those published articles have been published in Europe, but have not been allowed to be published in American journals.
Le docteur Stephen Barrett peut être considéré comme l'équivalent moderne de Maurice Fishbane. À la tête de la revue Quackwatch, qui signifie la veille contre les charlatans, il y dénonce publiquement et depuis longtemps tous les traitements que la médecine officielle estime être des fraudes ou des arnaques sans aucune valeur.
Take the Gerson therapy, for example. Gerson was a physician who claimed that he could cure cancer with diet and a number of other methods. There's absolutely no scientific evidence that he's cured anyone.
I was investigated 5 times on the MA. Every time they come, I show them, here's a patient you sent home to die, cured. Other patient, you sent home to die, cured. Next patient, you sent home to die, cured.
The Gerson therapy was known some 75 years ago. If doctors know there's a cure and send patients home to die, that is an atrocity worse than the Holocaust.
You can make paper out of it, you can make cloth out of it, you can make cord out of it, you can make oil, you can make medicine.
you can make
food out of hemp seed oil. You can burn it in a lamp. You can make rope. You can make parachute cordage and tie your shoes. And the Constitution was really printed on hemp paper.
For over 10,000 years, hemp was undeniably our most useful plant. Our ancestors depended on hemp's exceptionally strong fiber, cellulose-rich pulp, and highly nutritious seeds. The plant was cultivated and used throughout history for food, clothing, fuel and medicine, as well as for sails, rope, shelter, and paper.
For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. A 44-gun frigate took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging, including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
Popular Mechanics magazine recognized the potential bonanza for American farmers and entrepreneurs. This article heralded a machine that could process hemp quickly and cheaply for the first time in history.
Il y avait toutefois un problème. À cette époque, le magnat de la presse à scandale William Randolph Hearst avait acquis des millions et des millions d'hectares d'exploitations forestières qu'il comptait utiliser pour produire du papier pour ses journaux à succès grandissant. Avec le retour du papier de chanvre, devenu moins cher que celui produit à partir des arbres grâce aux nouvelles méthodes de fabrication, son empire était voué à l'effondrement en l'espace de quelques mois. Un autre géant de l'industrie, Lamotte Dupont, était directement menacé par le chanvre. C'était le propriétaire de la société pétrochimique qui venait d'obtenir ses brevets pour créer des dizaines de fibres synthétiques à partir du pétrole. Du nylon pour les chaussettes, les brosses, les vêtements et même les pneus de voiture, puis l'orlon, le dacron, les éponges synthétiques, le cellophane et toute la gamme de produits qui, sur le marché, allaient supplanter leurs concurrents fabriqués à partir du chanvre. Outre le risque de perdre des millions de dollars, Hearst et Dupont partageaient un autre point commun. Ils recevaient tous les deux leur financement de l'un des banquiers les plus puissants de l'époque, Andrew Mellon, alors également secrétaire au Trésor. Mellon nomma à la direction du Bureau fédéral des stupéfiants son futur gendre, John Anslinger. Avec l'aide des journalistes de Hearst et des productions hollywoodiennes complaisantes, Anslinger mit en route une gigantesque campagne médiatique visant à faire apparaître le chanvre comme un produit toxique et dangereux qui fut immédiatement banni du marché.
Marijuana, the dried leaves and flowers of the Indian hempweed, is used in the form of a cigarette. Marijuana smoking, experts point out, can make a helpless addict of its victim within weeks, causing physical and moral ruin and death.
Yes, what that kid does. Let's go, Jack, I'm red hot.
Should you ever be confronted with the temptation of taking that first puff of a marijuana cigarette, don't do it.
À la fin de cette puissante campagne anti-drogue, une nouvelle loi fut présentée au Parlement interdisant l'usage de la marijuana. Bien que le composant psychotrope du chanvre, le THC, se trouve uniquement dans les fleurs et ses feuilles, Anslinger parvint à faire interdire la culture totale de la plante dans tous les États-Unis. En effet, la plupart des sénateurs et députés qui approuvèrent la loi ne savaient même pas que la marijuana et le chanvre étaient la même chose.
Without any public debate, scientific inquiry, or political objection, the Marijuana Tax Act was signed into law by President Roosevelt.
La guerre contre le chanvre était officiellement déclarée. Elle mena à des dizaines d'arrestations retentissantes que Hearst s'empressa personnellement de rendre publiques dans toute la nation. Après la guerre, les États-Unis commencèrent à faire pression sur tous les pays encore producteurs de chanvre. Et à la fin des années 50, ils étaient parvenus à rendre la plante illégale pratiquement dans le monde entier. Ce fut sans aucun doute un immense cadeau fait à l'industrie du papier et du secteur pétrochimique. Mais cela nous offrit également le désastre écologique auquel nous assistons aujourd'hui. Pollution atmosphérique, chimique et environnementale, déforestation sauvage, extinction des espèces animales, augmentation du réchauffement climatique.
Virtually everything now made from trees and petroleum could instead be made from hemp. Not another single tree would ever have to be cut down to make paper. Clean-burning fuel would now be made from the biomass of the abundant hemp plant. This new fuel would run cars, factories, power plants, and would even provide heat for our homes. Hemp could be grown and processed into cloth and paper with only a fraction of the toxic chemicals used in processing cotton and trees.
Malheureusement, avec le chanvre, nous avons également perdu l'un des médicaments les plus importants jamais connus de l'homme.
Cannabis has been used medically since the year 2800 BC, when Emperor Shen founded the science of Chinese medicine. Wounds sustained in battle were bandaged in cannabis leaves.
À la fin du 19e siècle, plus de 30% des médicaments disponibles en Amérique contenaient du cannabis. Ce dernier compte presque autant de vertus thérapeutiques que de produits extractibles. Prévention des nausées et vomissements causés par la chimiothérapie, de l'anorexie, des douleurs provoquées par le cancer, des lésions de la colonne vertébrale, des glaucomes, de l'affaiblissement musculaire.
Today, doctors across the whole world are asking for the right to use cannabis as a treatment for pain, especially for cancer and AIDS.
Marijuana is much less dangerous than many other substances in less restrictive schedules like morphine and cocaine, not to mention the unscheduled legal mass killers, tobacco and alcohol. Of course, marijuana does have proven medical usefulness for some conditions.
One study that we did looked at patients with HIV-related painful peripheral neuropathy, which means nerve damage in the hands and feet. Very difficult problem. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories don't help, opioids don't help, acupuncture doesn't really help. So we gave people cannabis, and we saw that it helped. And from our pilot study where everybody smoked real cannabis, we then decided to do a placebo-controlled trial. And we demonstrated quite successfully that cannabis reduced peripheral neuropathy pain compared to placebo.
Despite its undeniable potential as the natural, renewable alternative to a synthetic world, the hemp plant, by federal law, still cannot be cultivated in the United States. Despite increasing public and scientific support, the medical use of marijuana still remains illegal. This is the reality of America's war on a plant.
En attendant, certaines personnes ont décidé sans plus attendre de prendre leur santé en main.
My name is Rick Simpson. I live at 344 Little Forks Road, just outside of Marchand, Nova Scotia. I'm here to tell you about the most medicinal plant known to man, hemp.
Depuis de nombreuses années, Rick Simpson produit et fournit aux malades de sa région une huile médicinale extraite du chanvre. Simpson produit cette huile sur son terrain avec un processus complexe qu'il a mis au point au fil des ans.
When collected and processed properly, the resulting oil is an effective cure or control for practically any disease known to man, even cancer. We have supplied this oil to dozens of people with cancer. Even people who were diagnosed with terminal cancer by our medical system now have a clean bill of health after treatment with hemp medicine.
One of the testaments to hemp oil's healing power is his father, a military veteran suffering from lung cancer.
And this last time I was in, I didn't know it, but they said I was going to die in 24 hours, but I didn't. So I took the oil and everything worked out right.
Well, I had skin cancer, melanoma cancer, they told me. I was treated time after time and I was burnt several times. It wasn't doing no good. All the salve they gave me, I put it on and put it on. So I ran across this fellow they called Ricky Simpson. Well, you see my face, I know it's all wrinkled up, but there are no big holes in it.
I used hemp oil for a number of conditions. Migraine headaches, cyst on my ovary, arthritis, bad skin allergies.
I had 2 months to live.
I was cashing in. I didn't care then. And got a hold of Rick, and Rick explained how this stuff works. The chemo and the radiation just kills everything inside of you. It doesn't give you a chance to live. And then when I look at my hemp oil, that's why I am sitting here today telling you.
January 07, my father came to stay with my wife and I because his cancer had become unmanageable. He could not stay alone anymore. At this point, the man had fluid in both lungs, couldn't even hardly walk around. His breathing had gone down to 70%, and he was on his last legs. We started him on the treatment. Inside of 3 months, the cancer was completely gone. In between that, he got nothing but better. The man improved every day from the time he started the oil until he went to a maintenance dose in March.
It works. It works. That's all I can say. You know, it works.
Même dans la province reculée de la Nouvelle-Écosse, les règles du jeu semblent identiques.
Hemp oil containing THC has been touted as an effective treatment for many diseases, including cancer. But distributing THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, is illegal.
Hemp oil is being used by some people in the Marchand area of Nova Scotia to help in the treatment of cancer. Now they're worried their hemp oil will be taken away.
People are being very scared of the RCMP coming in their home and taking their medicine from them. And
à cette époque, Rick Dwyer était le président du siège local de la Légion royale canadienne.
That's when we proceeded to call in these politicians, our health professionals, and our enforcement professionals, and all the people who should have been contacted over this issue. We wrote them a letter, and we stated to come to this meeting. We would show you the evidence, the human evidence, scientific evidence, and the medical evidence. And that's when they come in and shut our Royal Canadian Legion down.
The doors are locked here at the Royal Canadian Legion in McCann. Even past President Rick Dwyer can't get into the building. The charter has been pulled and the executive suspended because of their controversial support of the use of hemp oil as medicine.
And as Royal Canadian Legion members, for us to sit here while people were dying and suffering horribly and us knowing that this worked, I don't see where there's any honor to that.
Grâce à la tolérance des autorités locales, Rick Simpson peut continuer à fournir aux habitants de la zone son huile curative. Mais cela reste une activité illégale. Entre-temps, aucune autorité officielle ni aucun médecin privé ne s'est avancé pour en savoir plus sur les qualités curatives de l'huile produite par Rick Simpson.
That's a cure right there.
There's so many people out there suffering with so many diseases that this works for. And at nights I don't sleep very well because I think of those little children that are being poisoned and that are being fed chemotherapy and radiation and infants. And this is so horrible.
Vers la fin des années 30, le docteur Wilhelm Reich, un scientifique autrichien immigré aux États-Unis, déclara avoir découvert une forme d'énergie appelée orgone, qui n'était ni de nature électrique ni de nature magnétique. Il s'agissait d'une espèce d'énergie vitale, selon Reich, répandue dans l'univers, qui interagirait avec tous les êtres vivants. Cette forme d'énergie avait déjà été envisagée par Sigmund Freud, dont Reich fut l'élève, sans qu'il n'eût toutefois réussi à en démontrer l'existence. En revanche, Reich parvint à construire des accumulateurs spéciaux basés sur un principe d'attraction et de répulsion entre des métaux et des matériaux organiques, en mesure d'extraire cette énergie directement de l'atmosphère terrestre.
Here, Reich demonstrates a small motor being propelled by orgone energy from the body. And here, motor power is provided by orgone energy harnessed from the atmosphere. In 1953, during a long drought that threatened the Maine blueberry crop, several farmers offered to pay Reich if he could bring rain to the parched region. The Weather Bureau had forecast no rain for several days when Reich began his cloud-busting operations. 10 hours later, a light rain began to fall. Over the next few days, close to 2 inches fell. The blueberry crop was saved.
Le dit cloudbuster fonctionne selon un principe très précis.
Water, which strongly attracts and absorbs orgone, draws the atmospheric energy through the pipes. This movement of orgone from a lower to a higher energy system was used by Wright to create clouds and to dissipate them.
Différents scientifiques ont par la suite reconnu la validité de la méthode de Reich, qui après sa première expérience avait réussi à reproduire le phénomène avec succès au moins une centaine de fois. Mais les découvertes de Reich ne se limitèrent pas aux questions atmosphériques.
Reich discovered that under certain conditions, certain substances such as grass, blood, sand, charcoal, and foodstuffs disintegrate into pulsating vesicles that exhibit a bluish color. He called these vesicles bions. He also found that certain bions revealed a strong radiation phenomenon, seen here as a white field around the organism, and that these bions could kill bacteria and cancer cells.
Reich avait construit des accumulateurs spéciaux d'énergie orgone dans lesquels le patient s'installait pour un certain temps, amorçant ainsi une destruction progressive des cellules cancérigènes.
Over a period of time, the patients showed marked improvement, relief of pain, healthier blood condition, weight gain, and the shrinkage and elimination of tumors.
La nouvelle des premiers succès attira bientôt l'attention de la FDA, qui intervint pour bloquer les opérations et déclencha une guerre totale contre Reich. Accusé d'être communiste, catalogué de toutes parts comme un charlatan, Reich fut poursuivi par la FDA pour avoir annoncé la découverte d'une énergie qui, selon elle, n'existait pas. Mais Reich refusa de comparaître au tribunal, soutenant, comme il l'expliqua dans une lettre au juge, que les questions scientifiques ne pouvaient pas être résolues devant la loi, mais devaient être abordées dans le cadre d'un débat sain et ouvert par la communauté scientifique. Pour toute réponse, le juge ordonna le retrait de tous ses livres et la destruction de tous les travaux scientifiques relatifs à l'orgone. Malgré toutes ces difficultés, Reich continua à diffuser ses théories, attirant de plus en plus d'étudiants dans son nouvel institut scientifique. Les persécutions à son encontre continuèrent, et en mai 1956, Wilhelm Reich fut brusquement arrêté pour une banale infraction de transport commise par l'un de ses assistants et fut condamné à 2 ans de prison. Il mourut d'une crise cardiaque au bout de 8 mois d'incarcération, seul dans sa cellule. Cependant, sa famille ne crut jamais à cette version des faits et soupçonna toujours la mort de Reich par empoisonnement. Tous les projets, les instruments, la documentation et les équipements de Reich furent saisis et détruits. Tous ses livres furent brûlés sous la supervision directe de la FDA et toute référence à l'énergie orgone fut effacée pour toujours des pages de l'histoire. On n'avait jamais assisté à une fureur si dévastatrice des autorités américaines contre une forme d'énergie qui, selon elles, n'existait même pas.
In the course of the history of natural science, it always happened that profound or true thoughts or true facts were always either distorted or flattened out. The danger, especially of distortion, is particularly great in the case of orgonomy. We must be scientific, we cannot be political in these matters.
Dans les années 70, le docteur Ernest Krebs Jr. reprit et développa la théorie trophoblastique du cancer, d'abord proposée par le docteur John Beard au début du siècle dernier, puis soutenue par son père, Ernest Krebs, dans les années 50. Selon Krebs, la vitamine B17 que l'on trouve dans les noyaux d'abricots et d'autres fruits similaires est capable de combattre efficacement de nombreux types de cancers, parmi lesquels les cancers du sein, du poumon, du côlon et de la prostate. La vitamine B17, également connue sous le nom de laétrile, est l'un des remèdes naturels les plus répandus contre le cancer depuis plus de 50 ans. Au fil du temps, il a reçu le soutien de très nombreux professionnels et oncologues des 4 coins du monde. En Italie, ce fut le professeur Guidetti de l'université de Turin qui défendit les vertus anticancéreuses du laétrile, après avoir mené une expérimentation clinique qui donna des résultats très encourageants.
Dr. Dean Burke, head of the cytochemistry section of the National Cancer Institute, has reported that in a series of tests on animal tissue, the B17 had no effect on normal cells, but released so much cyanide and benzaldehyde when it came in contact with cancer cells that not one of them could survive. He said, "When we add Laetrile to a cancer culture under the microscope, we can see the cancer cells dying off like flies."
Il apparaît qu'à l'hôpital Sloan Kettering, le célèbre centre de recherche new-yorkais sur le cancer, on connaît aussi et depuis longtemps les propriétés thérapeutiques du Laetrile. C'est le docteur Kanematsu Sugiura, l'un des oncologues mondiaux les plus renommés de l'époque, qui le révéla dans une interview publiée en 1977. La nouvelle se répandit très vite et l'hôpital Sloan Kettering commença à faire pression sur Sugiura pour qu'il revienne sur ses déclarations. Mais Sugiura refusa de se rétracter, obligeant le Sloan Kettering à nier officiellement les vertus thérapeutiques du Laetrile. Par la suite, le Sloan Kettering fut accusé par plusieurs sources d'avoir falsifié les données de la recherche afin de nier les vertus anticancéreuses du Laetrile.
John Richardson, MD, who's now deceased, had a cancer clinic, a very thriving cancer clinic up in the San Francisco area. In the 70s, when he met Dr. Ernst T. Krebs Jr., had many conferences with him, became familiar with the theory, the science behind it, and began to cautiously use it in his practice. He was losing most of his patients that he was treating with cancer. He went from that to a high success rate almost overnight by using this substance. And so he became very enthusiastic about it. The word got around, his patients were very happy, of course, and they told their friends. It wasn't very long before people were coming from all over the United States, and in some cases even from Europe, to be treated at the Richardson Clinic. Then he got into trouble with the medical authorities. The hospital administration contacted him and said, "You have to stop using this material because it is not approved by the FDA." And he said, "Yeah, I know it's not approved, but it works." They said, "We don't care whether it works or not. It is not an approved substance and you're in violation of the law."
Les organismes médicaux officiels ne reconnurent jamais l'efficacité thérapeutique du Laetrile et la FDA le mit dans la liste des substances toxiques, empêchant ainsi sa commercialisation aux États-Unis. En 1992, le docteur William Lane fit les gros titres avec son livre intitulé « Les requins n'attrapent pas le cancer », dans lequel il soutint que le cartilage de requin était capable d'éradiquer de nombreux types de cancers. Comme on le sait, pour pouvoir croître au-delà d'une certaine taille, les tumeurs ont besoin de construire leur propre système de vascularisation, appelé angiogénèse, sans lequel elles sont condamnées à mourir par manque d'oxygène. Le docteur Lane avait découvert que le cartilage de requin possédait une caractéristique anti-angiogénique particulière qui lui permettait d'envelopper et d'étouffer les tumeurs, les empêchant de développer de nouveaux vaisseaux nécessaires à leur croissance. De surcroît, plusieurs recherches médicales ont confirmé officiellement les vertus anti-angiogéniques du cartilage de requin. Pourtant, le cartilage de requin n'est pas pris en considération pour soigner le cancer, bien que les entreprises pharmaceutiques mènent une course effrénée pour être la première à breveter un composant chimique qui imite ses caractéristiques anti-angiogéniques. Ou alors, elles essaient de découvrir un extrait du cartilage naturel pourvu des mêmes caractéristiques, mais qui pourrait être breveté.
They are interested in finding something, perhaps within something in nature. If they can find some subcomponent that they can extract and then make it a man-made chemical that works the same way, then they can patent that, then they're interested, but not if it comes from nature.
Un autre remède naturel contre le cancer, utilisé surtout en Europe, est le gui, une plante semi-parasite qui se trouve sur les chênes et d'autres espèces d'arbres. Plusieurs médicaments sont produits à partir du gui, tels que l'Iscador, dont l'efficacité contre le cancer est connue depuis de très nombreuses années.
I think it deserves some merit because it's nothing new. It's not a fad. It's been around a long time. It's been used for over 70, 80 years.
Le scientifique et philosophe autrichien Rudolf Steiner, fondateur de la médecine anthroposophique, indiquait déjà l'usage du gui contre le cancer dans les années 20. Mais la plante de gui est considérée comme sacrée depuis le temps des Celtes qui l'utilisaient comme médecine universelle. Le malade du cancer qui ingère du gui enregistre une augmentation immédiate des macrophages dans le sang, presque toujours suivie par une régression de la maladie.
We do know that it has immune stimulatory properties, like if you measure like cytokines, you can see them actually go up with using mistletoe. There's components in mistletoe that are actually cytotoxic, meaning it actually can kill cancer cells or it can put them to sleep.
Dans les cliniques steineriennes, l'iscador est intégré dans un traitement contre le cancer bien plus vaste qui s'étend aux aspects émotionnels, psychologiques et spirituels de l'être humain. Aux États-Unis, en revanche, le traitement à base de gui est quasiment inconnu. Le système de santé britannique, quant à lui, a tenu à en nier les vertus thérapeutiques en utilisant pour le coup la formule classique de l'efficacité non prouvée.
CT has reviewed the evidence relating to mistletoe in the management of breast cancer, and we have found, and I'm one of the people that's looked at the evidence, we've found that there's no convincing supporting evidence.
Récemment, l'actrice et écrivaine américaine Susan Somers a annoncé avoir été guérie du cancer du sein grâce à l'iscador.
You mentioned cancer. Back in 2001, you, on this program, announced that you had been battling cancer. Most people would just go to the doctor and get chemo. You went a different route. How are you now?
Well, I just had my killer cells tested, naturally. That's your immune system. And I've been injecting that Iscador now for 8 years. So I haven't had a cold, I haven't had anything.
You don't have cancer?
I don't have cancer anymore.
On pourrait continuer ainsi pendant des heures à faire l'inventaire des cas historiques dans lesquels un traitement potentiel contre le cancer est tombé dans l'oubli. Du soin à base de vitamine C du lauréat du prix Nobel Linus Pauling, au crébiosène du docteur Ivy, des soins moléculaires avec le microscope du docteur Riffet, aux toxines du docteur Coley, la dynamique est toujours restée plus ou moins la même. Les médecins sont mis à l'index, catalogués comme charlatans, ignorés ou persécutés sans que leur traitement ne soit jamais soumis à une expérimentation scientifique sérieuse. La dernière personne en date à avoir proposé un remède naturel contre le cancer est le docteur Tullio Simoncini. Tullio Simoncini est un oncologue italien plongé depuis de nombreuses années au cœur d'une forte polémique, car il soutient l'hypothèse selon laquelle la cause du cancer ne serait pas d'ordre génétique, mais serait provoquée par l'agression d'un champignon appelé Candida albicans. Sur la base de cette hypothèse, Simoncini propose de soigner le cancer avec du bicarbonate de soude, et les résultats qu'il a obtenus jusqu'à aujourd'hui semblent très encourageants.
What is a fungus? In other words, how do we get this fungus inside our body, or this yeast inside our body? Where do you think all of this starts after your years of research?
There is an endemy, a big epidemic pollution, because the fungus is undervalued. But it is undervalued because it is not understood.
Le docteur Simoncini a senti le besoin de remettre en cause tout le paradigme du cancer depuis les premiers jours de ses études en oncologie. Son attention fut attirée par le fait qu'en comparant des dizaines d'organes complètement différents les uns des autres, toutes les tumeurs se comportaient de la même manière. Il se mit ainsi à la recherche d'un dénominateur commun qui expliquerait la coloration blanchâtre présente dans la grande majorité des tumeurs examinées.
These tumor specimens show the devastating impact the disease can have on the body. This is a liver, riddled with cancer. The whitish bubbles are all tumors.
If you enter in the body and you reach an organ affected by the cancer, you can see that the lumps are always white.
The lumps are white?
Lumps are always white. Sometimes it is covered with blood or with the defense reaction. But in every post-mortem examination, scientists find the white lumps, the white masses, that is fungi. This is the pleura. We entered with the camera and look, the pleura should be red, but you can see all the lumps, all the cancer that is white. This is the heart beating. This is a bronchial cancer. Look, we went into the bronchia. Look, they are white. And then in the colon cancer, this is red because there is a little bit blood. I washed it up.
Okay, and now it's white.
Now, look. It is always white.
Blanc, comme la candida. En latin, Candida albicans signifie blanc éclatant. En soi, la présence de champignons dans les tumeurs n'est évidemment pas une nouveauté dans le monde de la médecine. L'oncologie officielle considère pourtant que cette présence est due à la nature opportuniste du champignon qui parvient à installer ses colonies seulement après l'apparition du cancer. Cette conviction semble toutefois contredite par une observation attentive de ce qui se passe entre les champignons et les êtres vivants, au niveau les plus bas de la hiérarchie animale.
Spores from a parasitic fungus called Cordyceps have infiltrated this ant's body and mind. As soon as she is discovered by the workers, the ant is taken away and dumped far away from the colony. It seems extreme, but this is the reason why. After a while, the fruiting body of the Cordyceps erupts from the ant's head. It can take 3 weeks to grow, and when finished, the deadly spores will burst from its tip. Then, any ant in the vicinity will be in serious risk of death. The fungus is so virulent, it can wipe out whole colonies of ants. And it's not just ants that fall victims to this killer.
Dans ce cas, c'est le champignon qui a causé la mort de la fourmi après avoir envahi son organisme, et non pas la mort de la fourmi qui a ensuite provoqué l'apparition du champignon. Ce qui semble normalement être un simple opportuniste se révèle en réalité un véritable assassin.
Allora viene il dubbio, non sarà che viene prima debilita l'organismo e poi nel momento in cui la si vede è il momento della massima invasione? Chi ci dice che sia solamente un post hoc? Il fatto che ci sia è un dato di fatto, il fatto che sia un post hoc è un'interpretazione.
So the oncologists and scientists say because the cancer invades the organism, it gets weak and the candida that is opportunistic invade the organism. On the contrary, I say that the candida enters to the organism, makes the cancer, destroy the organism, then explodes everywhere.
La candida est un champignon très commun, particulièrement observé chez les femmes qui développent parfois une infection fongique dans leurs organes génitaux.
The vagina is a muscular canal that leads from the outside of the body to the uterus. The warmth and moisture of this canal create a perfect environment for microorganisms to breed. For example, bacteria called lactobacilli, which are naturally present in the vagina, coexist with a yeast fungus called Candida albicans. Normally, the lactobacilli create an acidic environment that keeps the natural yeast population in balance. However, when conditions within the vagina change that either decrease the numbers of lactobacilli or decrease the acidity, these yeast fungi begin to multiply.
Normalement, le système immunitaire contrôle sa croissance, l'empêchant d'établir des colonies permanentes. Voici un leucocyte ou globule blanc qui se rend compte de la présence d'un champignon et qui l'enveloppe et l'avale lentement pour le tuer. Si toutefois les défenses immunitaires de l'individu, quelle qu'en soit la raison, sont inférieures à la normale, la candida peut réussir à s'agréger et à se reproduire pratiquement partout dans le corps humain.
Esistono le candidosi superficiali, quelle che attecchiscono sugli epiteli, le candidosi classiche del cavo orofaringeo, della vagina, eccetera, eccetera. E poi esistono le candidosi profonde, quelle in cui la candida è riuscita a sorpassare gli epiteli e il sistema immunitario e è riuscita a radicarsi nell'interno dell'organismo, in un organo. Il momento in cui un fungo entra dentro il tessuto connettivo nella parte interna dell'organismo, si chiama la candidosi intima, evoca una reazione di tipo immunitario cellulare che porta alla formazione del tumore. Il tumore secondo me sarebbe quindi l'insieme dell'invasione fungina più la reazione cellulare que l'organisme mette in campo.
En d'autres termes, ce que nous appelons tumeur ne serait en aucun cas une réplication folle de nos cellules, mais une défense lucide et désespérée mise en œuvre par nos organes dans une tentative de repousser l'agression de la colonie fongique. Toujours d'après Simoncini, les métastases ne sont pas des cellules tumorales qui abandonnent l'organe malade pour aller se reproduire ailleurs, mais sont de petits groupes de champignons appartenant à la tumeur primaire qui se retrouvent dans le flux sanguin durant les biopsies ou les opérations chirurgicales. Ces groupes de champignons s'arrêtent à l'endroit le plus opportun et se préparent à tirer avantage d'un organisme déjà affaibli en attente d'établir de nouvelles colonies dès que possible. Une fois ce processus invasif engagé, il devient nécessaire de rétablir au plus vite l'efficacité maximale du système immunitaire. Si à l'inverse on administre à un patient des chimiothérapies, celles-ci ne feront rien d'autre qu'accélérer la destruction de ses défenses immunitaires naturelles, puisque ces composants tuent sans distinction les cellules malades et les cellules saines. Si la chimiothérapie est en effet capable de prolonger l'espérance de vie de quelques mois, elle rend en fait impossible la reconstruction des défenses naturelles de l'organisme, qui de cette façon est destiné à un moment ou à un autre à succomber à l'assaut multiple des colonies fongiques. Pour vérifier cette théorie, Tullio Simoncini songea à combattre le cancer avec le bicarbonate de soude, l'un des pires ennemis naturels des champignons.
Sodium bicarbonate is the strongest substance against fungi. It cannot adapt to a salt because it is not a complex substance. That's why the antifungal today's antifungal drugs are ineffective. Because the fungi can adapt themselves in 3-4 days. For a fungus, you give an antifungal drug, you can kill the first layer, but the second layer they get used and they eat drugs, chemotherapy, everything.
Gennaro San Germano est l'un des premiers patients guéris au bicarbonate par Simoncini. En 1983, il fut diagnostiqué d'un cancer du poumon en phase terminale et on lui annonça qu'il ne lui restait que quelques mois à vivre. En 2006, soit 23 ans plus tard, il donna cette interview.
Buonasera. Buonasera, io mi chiamo Massimo. Mi sembra di parlare con una persona molto fortunata, mi sembra di capire, giusto?
Sì, molto fortunato, veramente.
Perché i pesi...
Molto fortunato, ma grazie a Dio, dottore Simoncini. Sono incontrato con fortuna perché mi aveva detto che mi fa un altro ricovero. Perché la macchia si stava allargando quando sono andato alla visita. E ho detto vieni da me, sono andato con la cura che mi ha dato lui, con grazia di Dio.
E ci ha messo, mi diceva la moglie, ci ha messo 8-9 mesi a guarire?
Sì, oltre 9 mesi.
Però se n'è andato via tutto il tumore?
Sì, per grazia di Dio, sì, che hanno ritrovato che è andato via. Non credere, però a me è andato bene.
Già è lì, infatti, dice...
Perché mi hanno detto che c'aveva 6-7 mesi di vita addirittura.
Lei non ha fatto nessun'altra cura insieme a Simoncini, cioè lei è sicuro che l'ha guarita questa cosa qua?
Sì.
Non ha fatto nient'altro?
La cura di Simoncini, altri non sono andati. Adesso solo che qui qualche raffreddore, la febbre, mi hanno andato mediche.
Vabbè, chiaro, normale.
Allora, comunque la cura là non l'ha fatta solo lui.
Non ha fatto nient'altro insieme?
No.
Ho capito.
Après ses premiers succès, Simoncini demanda à présenter sa documentation au ministère de la Santé, espérant que sa thérapie serait soumise à des tests cliniques basés sur des protocoles scientifiques légaux. Non seulement il se heurta à un mur de silence, mais il fut de surcroît radié de l'ordre des médecins pour avoir administré aux patients du bicarbonate de soude, indiqua l'exposé des motifs, pratique dépourvue de fondements scientifiques et non exercée en Italie. Des motifs encore difficiles à comprendre, étant donné que l'usage du bicarbonate contre les tumeurs est suggéré par les livres anciens de médecine orientale.
Alkali of strong potency should be used in diseases arising from anella, schleusma, beta, cancerous growth and such others which are very difficult to cure.
Ce livre a plus de 1000 ans. Tout de suite après, le docteur Simoncini fut la suite d'une campagne de discrédit dans les plus importants médias italiens, où il fut dépeint comme un charlatan et un escroc sans scrupules.
Amici di Striscia, oggi vi parleremo di un personaggio che dice di curare i tumori con il bicarbonato. Seguiteci. Buonasera, Jimmy Ghione, Striscia la notizia. Come va?
Niente,
Senta, ma com'è questa storia del bicarbonato? Ci può raccontare com'è che si curano i tumori con il bicarbonato? E ci può raccontare un po' com'è questa storia? Se basta il bicarbonato per curare i tumori.
Aspetti che poi riscendo.
No, aspetti,
aspetti che riscendo.
Ma perché fa così?
Par la suite, Simoncini se trouva accusé de la mort de plusieurs patients qui avaient suivi sa thérapie et fut condamné pour l'un des cas à 3 ans pour homicide involontaire. Les médias s'emparèrent immédiatement de la nouvelle et portèrent un coup fatal à sa réputation.
Francesco Cognetti, direttore scientifico dell'Istituto Nazionale dei Tumori della Regina Elena di Roma, uno dei più importanti oncologi italiani. No, perché quando parliamo di medicina e anche di cure innovative bisogna stare attenti. Dice quest'uomo, sto Simoncini, è un fungo, il tumore è un fungo e si cura col bicarbonato di sodio. L'impressione immediata di un grande medico.
Beh, una tesi bizzarra, voler essere ottimisti, e direi che è pazzesco, non c'è nessuna dimostrazione che ci siano rapporti tra infezioni fungine e neoplasie, né tantomeno che i funghi siano l'unica causa di cancro, come sostenuto dal dottor Simoncini.
Possiamo dire con assoluta certezza che il bicarbonato di sodio al tumore purtroppo non gli fa nulla, se no sarebbe stato molto semplice
assolutamente
affrontarlo.
nulla, ma può essere, devo dire, anche pericoloso, perché se somministrato a dosi importanti può determinare squilibri metabolici importantissimi che possono compromettere la funzione renale, la funzione respiratoria, la funzione cardiaca, cerebrale, e quindi è un farmaco che, se somministrato a dosi importanti, può determinare anche la morte.
Quando si parla di potere, che cosa significa in pratica? Significa questo, che se uno dice una cosa nuova o grossa, come è successo a me, si attiva all'ordine, uno, mandano i giornalisti che dicono quello che vogliono, attivano denunce false, le magistrature, con cose inesistenti, ma tanto ti mettono il mare in mezzo, e alla fine uno deve remare contrario per dimostrare qualcosa di valido. E questo lo fanno con tutti, perché c'è, secondo me, una mancanza di lungimiranza.
Le paradoxe se situe dans le fait que Simoncini n'est pas du tout un médecin alternatif, ou du moins contraire au système, mais il est peut-être le plus allopathique et orthodoxe de tous.
La strada per far fuori il fungo dentro, fuori e anche il tumore sia quella di concepire degli antifungini a cascata sequenziale. Il concetto in chemioterapia esiste, le terapie sequenziali fatte a cicli, eccetera, eccetera, perché bisognerebbe scogitare degli antifungini che sono efficaci in un primo momento, come il fungo varia, cambiare l'antifungino in funzione della variazione del fungo, e così stargli dietro secondo le variazioni. Però dovrebbero venire in campo le case farmaceutiche in questo momento, perché adesso non capiscono questo grosso affare che c'è sotto. Loro vedono la multinazionale che fa, vede il pericolo dell'azzeramento dei chemioterapi, eccetera, e fa guerra, fa terreno bruciato a tutti. Chi dice qualsiasi cosa gli taglia il collo.
Malgré ses innombrables difficultés, Tullio Simoncini n'a jamais cessé de se battre pour promouvoir sa théorie, présentant ses témoignages lors de conférences dans le monde entier. Entre-temps, il mit au point différentes techniques d'utilisation de cathéters spéciaux qui permettent d'administrer le bicarbonate directement autour de la tumeur, obtenant ainsi une efficacité maximale pour une dose nécessaire minimale.
Sodium bicarbonate is effective if you can put in contact the sodium bicarbonate with the cancer. So, if you want to reach the prostate cancer, you have to locate before a catheter in the pudenda artery that reaches the prostate. Then you can administer through a port cat connected to the catheter the sodium bicarbonate directly to the prostate.
This is John Blankenship in Houston, Texas. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in about August of 2007. They did a biopsy and later on scheduled me for radical prostatectomy.
Opposé à l'idée de perdre sa prostate, Blankenship se mit à la recherche d'une solution alternative et choisit d'opter pour la thérapie de Simoncini.
And I arrived Rome on the 1st of February, and on Monday, on the 4th of February, we put a catheter in. So I flew back to the United States with the catheter in place and started on a treatment schedule of 6 days of infusions and then 6 days off of rest. And we did 4 or 5 of these cycles. I just took on Tuesday, the 26th of August 2008, a ultrasound examination of my prostate, and Apparently, the doctor, I consulted with him, and he said he couldn't find anything. He wrote a report to that effect, and I faxed the report to Dr. Simonchini today, and he was delighted with the results. He said it's all gone.
So, according to this ultrasound scan, your cancer is gone.
Yes, sir.
Can you believe that?
I absolutely believe it. I believe everything that Dr. Simonchini says.
And then there are some type of cancer, breast cancer, doesn't need of the catheter, bladder cancer, brain cancer.
You're saying a urethral catheter can deliver sodium bicarb to the bladder.
Yeah.
La cura è che non esisteva di mettere quel canale di sodio diluito al 5%, cosa normale per magia, veniva un infermiere col catetere e me lo metteva in vescica.
Après 7 interventions chirurgicales, le cancer de la vessie de M. Giordano était toujours réapparu, et on lui avait annoncé qu'à ce stade, tout l'organe allait devoir être retiré. M. Giordano choisit au contraire d'essayer la thérapie au bicarbonate du docteur Tullio Simoncini.
La terapia, a distanza di una settimana, vado a rifare il controllo e era tutto sparito, non c'era più. È tutto pulito? Tutto pulito.
Son médecin traitant nous en apporte la confirmation.
Adesso i risultati ci dimostrano effettivamente che questa terapia è stata efficace, efficacissima, vista la guarigione, e io penso che questa terapia sia veramente una cosa innovativa, una fortuna che ci sia, insomma.
Lei è medico, diciamo, generico?
Medico chirurgo, sì, medico di famiglia.
Un autre organe relativement facile à atteindre avec la solution de bicarbonate est l'utérus.
Nell'ottobre del 2007 mi hanno diagnosticato una displasia nella cervice del collo dell'utero, vale a dire che ho saputo intorno al 27-28 dicembre di avere un carcinoma microinvasivo del collo dell'utero che sarebbe potuto così estendersi. No?
Les médecins dirent à Sylvia qu'elle aurait dû procéder au plus tôt à l'ablation complète de son utérus avant que la tumeur ne se diffuse dans d'autres parties du corps. Après des recherches difficiles et contre l'avis de tous, Sylvia décida finalement d'opter pour la thérapie non invasive de Tullio Simoncini.
Quindi praticamente hai fatto tutto da sola? Cioè...
Tutto da sola, infatti ho fatto tutto da sola. Ho acquistato immediatamente del bicarbonato e la sera stessa ho cominciato a fare questi lavaggi della durata di un'ora, un quarto d'ora per posizione, tirando il corpo sul fianco, poi il prono, e dopo neanche 2 mesi, diciamo 7 settimane, ho fatto un controllo il quale si è avverato completamente negativo, privo, diciamo, un controllo con una microcolposcopia che non ha rilevato nessuna anomalia cellulare.
Depuis lors, Sylvia a fait 5 nouveaux contrôles qui se sont tous révélés négatifs. Les personnes de son entourage qui lui avaient fortement déconseillé d'abandonner les thérapies officielles semblèrent plus stupéfaites qu'elle-même.
Adesso che dicono queste persone?
Adesso sono così, tra l'ammirazione e la sorpresa infinita, perché mi vedono sto bene, non ho più nessun tipo di...
soprattutto poi come te l'avevano messa, che è assolutamente urgentissimo.
Sì, veramente incredibile.
Io mi chiamo Annalisa e nel 2002 ho avuto un tumore al cervello.
In 2002, Annalisa Grillo was diagnosed with a brain tumor called astrocytoma. She underwent surgery, followed by chemo and radio cycles, only to see a relapse in 2006. The consequences of the second surgery were even worse.
La seconda operazione che mi ha lasciato limitata per metà corpo, mi hanno portato a questo. Quindi mio marito Massimo si è dedicato ad altri tipi di medicina.
Tra le varie possibili ho creduto di iniziare quella del dottor Simoncini, una cura a base di sodio bicarbonato endovena.
After 4 cycles of sodium bicarbonate, the RMI test showed a small reduction in the tumoral mass.
Dopo po' di tempo, qualche mese più o meno, si sono verificati i primi risultati positivi.
A second set of 4 cycles reduced the mass of the tumor even further. The last 14 cycles, between March and August 2007, managed to clear the tumor completely.
La quale cura ha portato alla totale regressione della lesione, permanendo ad oggi soltanto un piccolo esito tipo cicatriziale postumo dell'intervento.
Le docteur Simoncini est convaincu que les cancers de la peau sont également causés par un champignon, et il suggère de les traiter avec de la teinture d'iode, suivant une procédure précise qui nécessite plusieurs cycles d'application selon les cas.
My name is Dragan Mišić and I come from Perth, Western Australia. Because in Australia, especially Perth, they couldn't cure my basal cell carcinoma and melanoma, I had 2 operations and many treatments with liquid nitrogen. But they completely damaged my skin.
And what did you do after that?
I applied the same therapy that Dr. Simoncini described in his book, Cancer is Fungus. I applied that for about, a few weeks and
the cancer is gone?
Totally gone. For the first time, I feel, cured and free, and I feel like I got my life back again.
Same story for Gemma, who had a basalioma on her chest and cured it with the same procedure.
Una dimostrazione come dovevo spennellare con la tintura di iodio, io ho capito perfettamente, ho continuato e tempo 2 mesi, come c'era scritto nel libro, è andato via.
Malheureusement, toutes les tumeurs ne peuvent pas être atteintes facilement et combattues avec la même efficacité. Les os, par exemple, sont peu irrigués et il est souvent difficile d'y faire parvenir la quantité de bicarbonate nécessaire pour éradiquer les colonies fongiques les plus volumineuses. Le dernier témoignage est consacré à une personne qui s'est retrouvée en même temps des 2 côtés de la barrière.
Io mi chiamo Carmelo Lombardo.
Di mestiere?
Sono nato, mestiere faccio il medico.
Après qu'on lui ait retiré une tumeur au côlon, le docteur Lombardo découvrit avoir des métastases au foie. Peu après son opération au foie, il découvrit que le cancer avait atteint ses 2 poumons.
Ormai avevo detto vabbè, quando sono stato operato dalla mia carica l'ho detto, però pensavo di avere 6 anni e mezzo, 2 anni, forse.
Après son opération du foie, le docteur Lombardo prit connaissance de la thérapie de Simoncini et décida de se servir des cathéters déjà mis en place pour sa chimiothérapie, mais pour y introduire la solution de bicarbonate de soude.
Quindi lei aveva il port per la chemio e invece l'ha usato per infilare il bicarbonato?
Sì, per il bicarbonato, sì.
Il port dove ce l'aveva esattamente?
Il port ce l'ho all'altezza della seconda costola, precisamente hanno incannulato la carotide interna e raggiunge la cava superiore.
Après plusieurs cycles de bicarbonate, un examen au scanner révéla la disparition totale des 2 tumeurs du poumon.
Con esame fatto con mezzo di contrasto e senza contrasto non si apprezzano lesioni né di tipo primitivo né di tipo secondario.
Lei ha un messaggio da dare ai suoi colleghi medici? Di qualcosa?
Ai colleghi medici sicuramente, io dico una frase che dico sempre: la verità a volte è davanti alla punta del nostro naso, ma è talmente vicina che non riusciamo a metterla a fuoco, quindi a vederla. Quindi cerchiamo, e poi un'altra cosa, la verità non esiste una verità. La verità non è qualcosa che tu puoi pensare di possedere. La verità è ricerca. La verità la trovi soltanto se ampli i tuoi orizzonti, se allarghi il tuo modo di vedere.